My son's face turned from smug satisfaction to pure rage in less than 3 seconds. The sound of his fist slamming against the mahogany conference table echoed through the attorney's office like a gunshot. Papers scattered across the polished surface as Brandon's voice rose to a scream that made the windows rattle. "This is fraud! Criminal fraud!" Before we continue, please subscribe to the channel Velvet Revenge and let us know where you're watching from in the comments. The mop handle slipped from my grip, clattering against the hospital corridor's linoleum floor. Through the thin wall of the supply closet, I could hear Dr. Peterson complaining to a nurse about someone leaving cleaning solution in the wrong storage area. At 63 years old, I'd learned to let these small criticisms roll off my back. After 30 years maintaining Boston General Hospital's East Wing, I knew which battles were worth fighting. My phone vibrated in my coverall pocket. I ignored it, focused on wringing out the mop head. It vibrated again, then again. On the fourth buzz, I pulled it out, expecting another automated reminder about my car insurance. Thomas Whitmore speaking. "Mr. Whitmore, this is Catherine Mills, from Mills, Patterson and Associates. I'm calling regarding Catherine Elizabeth Whitmore." The name hit me like a physical blow. Nobody had said my ex-wife's full name to me in 16 years, not since the divorce attorney had read it aloud during our final settlement meeting. "What about her?" "Sir, I'm very sorry to inform you that Dr. Whitmore passed away last Thursday evening. The memorial service is scheduled for this Saturday at 11 o'clock at Trinity Episcopal Church in Cambridge." I stood perfectly still in that supply closet, surrounded by bottles of disinfectant and boxes of latex gloves. Thursday evening. That was 5 days ago. 5 days while I'd been mopping floors and unclogging drains, Kate had been gone from the world. "Mr. Whitmore, are you there?" "Yes, I'm here." My voice sounded hollow, distant. "How did you get my number?" "Your contact information was listed in Dr. Whitmore's personal documents. I understand you were previously married." "Previously married." 24 years condensed into a legal category. "We divorced in 2009. "I see. There will be a reading of the will following the memorial service. You're named in the will, so your presence would be required." Named in the will? The words felt impossible. Kate had built her medical empire after our divorce, transforming the small clinic she'd founded during our marriage into something I barely recognized from the occasional news articles. That doesn't make sense. "Nevertheless, Mr. Whitmore, you are specifically mentioned. The will reading will take place at our offices at 2 o'clock Saturday afternoon. Can I confirm your attendance?" Through the supply closet door, I could see hospital staff moving past, their white coats and scrubs a blur of purposeful motion. This was my world now, small and manageable and far removed from the life Kate had chosen. "The church," I said slowly. "Trinity Episcopal in Cambridge?" "That's correct. Service begins at 11. After hanging up, I remained in the closet for several minutes, staring at the cleaning supplies without seeing them. Kate was dead. Impossible, stubborn, brilliant Kate was gone. The woman who had once told me she loved my hands because they were always fixing things, always making the world work better. The afternoon my shift ended at 3, but I barely noticed the time passing. I finished my rounds mechanically, mopping floors I'd mopped 1,000 times before, emptying trash cans, restocking paper towels. "Doctor?" Peterson walked past me twice without acknowledgement, which was normal. To most of the hospital staff, I was invisible, part of the infrastructure like the plumbing or electrical systems. That evening, sitting in my small apartment in Watertown, I found myself thinking about the first time I'd seen Kate. It was February 1985, and I was 23 years old, working night maintenance at Massachusetts General Hospital. She was a third-year resident, running on coffee and determination, her surgical scrubs perpetually wrinkled from too many consecutive shifts. I'd been fixing a stuck door in the residence lounge at 2 in the morning when she stormed in, threw her stethoscope on the table, and announced to the empty room, "If one more attending tells me I'm too aggressive in my treatment recommendations because I'm a woman, I'm going to perform an appendectomy on him without anesthesia." I'd laughed before I could stop myself. She'd whirled around, noticing me for the first time. "How long have you been standing there?" "Long enough to volunteer as a character witness at your trial," I'd replied. Her laugh had transformed her face, softening the exhausted edges into something radiant. "Your facility's maintenance, right? Can you do anything about the coffee maker?" "It's been broken for 3 days." "I can take a look." I'd fixed her coffee maker, then her desk lamp. then the squeaky wheel on the equipment cart she always used. Within a month, she was seeking me out during her breaks, sitting on equipment crates in supply rooms while I worked, talking about her cases, her frustrations, her dreams of opening a clinic that would serve the underserved neighborhoods she'd grown up in. "You're a good listener, Thomas Whitmore," she'd said one night, watching me rewire a faulty electrical outlet. "Most people just wait for their turn to talk. You actually hear what people say. Maybe because I don't have much worth saying myself." That's not true. She'd said it with such conviction that I'd looked up from my work, meeting her eyes. You see how things work. How to fix what's broken. That's rare. 6 months later, I proposed in that same residence lounge, getting down on one knee between the broken coffee maker I'd fixed and the desk lamp I'd repaired. She'd said yes before I'd finished asking. Our wedding was small, just family and close friends, in a community center in Dorchester where Kate had volunteered during medical school. She'd worn a simple white dress she'd borrowed from her sister, and I'd worn the only suit I owned. We couldn't afford much, but we were happy in a way that felt indestructible. Brandon arrived 2 years later, a healthy baby boy with Kate's determined chin and my quiet temperament. Those early years were hard financially, but rich in everything else. Kate was building her practice, working impossible hours. I'd moved to day shift maintenance at Boston General, so I could be home with Brandon at night. We tag-teamed parenting, passing our son between us like a relay baton, stealing moments together when our schedules aligned. "We're a team," Kate would say, collapsing into bed beside me after a 30-hour shift. "You and me against the world." I believed her completely. But success has a way of changing people. Or maybe it just reveals who they were all along. When Brandon turned 8, Kate's clinic landed a major contract with a hospital network. Suddenly, there was money for things we'd never imagined needing. We moved from our small apartment in Dorchester to a house in Newton with a yard and a garage. Brandon's bedroom was bigger than our first apartment had been. "Isn't this incredible?" Kate had asked, spinning around in our new kitchen with its granite counters and stainless steel appliances. "We finally have room to breathe." I'd missed our old place, where we'd been forced together by proximity, where intimacy was inevitable because there was nowhere else to go. The changes came gradually, so slowly I didn't recognize them as warning signs until it was too late. Brandon's 8th birthday party had 75 guests, most of them children of Kate's professional associates. I'd suggested a smaller gathering at the park, maybe 10 of his actual friends. "He needs to learn how to network," Kate had said, as if our 8-year-old son was preparing for a business career. "Relationships matter, Tom. The right connections open doors. He's a kid. He should be worried about baseball and video games, not networking." That attitude is exactly why you'll always be in maintenance. She'd said it casually, without malice, but the words had cut deeper than any intentional insult could have. Brandon thrived in this new environment in ways that both impressed and disturbed me. By age 12, he could work a room like a seasoned politician, charming Kate's colleagues with precocious observations about medical trends and healthcare policy. By 15, he'd stopped inviting me to his school events, preferring Kate's presence because she understood the important people there. "Dad doesn't get it," I'd overheard him tell Kate one evening. "He's still thinking like someone who fixes toilets for a living." "Your father is a good man," Kate had replied, but I'd noticed she hadn't corrected his fundamental assessment. The real breaking point came when Brandon was 17. Kate had been working on a massive expansion project, planning to open 3 new clinics in underserved areas. It consumed her completely. 100-hour work weeks, missed dinners, forgotten anniversaries. I'd been handling everything at home, the cooking, the cleaning, making sure Brandon got to his activities, maintaining the house she was never in. One night, after she'd missed Brandon's awards ceremony where he'd been honored for academic achievement, I'd finally confronted her. "We're losing you, Kate. Brandon barely sees you. We barely see you. I'm building something important, Tom." She'd been checking emails on her phone while we talked, not even looking up. "These clinics will serve thousands of people who need care. What about the 2 people who need you here? That's not fair. Everything I'm doing is for this family." "No," I'd said quietly. "It's not. It's for you. For what you want to achieve, to prove. We stopped being the reason years ago." She'd finally looked up from her phone, and I'd seen something cold in her eyes that I'd never seen before. "Maybe the problem isn't my ambition, Tom. Maybe it's your lack of it. I'm changing people's lives while you're still mopping floors at the same hospital where I found you." The divorce had been quick and efficient. like a surgical procedure. Kate's lawyers had been thorough and professional. I'd gotten the small house we'd lived in before Newton, the one she'd kept as a rental property, plus enough money to live modestly. She'd gotten everything else, including Brandon's complete loyalty. You held her back, Brandon had told me during one of our last real conversations before he moved to New York for college. All those years, she could have been doing so much more if she hadn't been worried about your feelings, your limitations. Is that what she told you? She didn't have to tell me. I watched it happen. Mom's a visionary, Dad. Your maintenance. Those worlds don't mix. Now, 16 years later, I sat alone in my modest apartment with the news of Kate's death settling over me like dust. The woman I'd loved more than anything, the woman who'd shared my dreams before she'd outgrown them, was gone. And somehow, impossibly, she'd remembered me in her will. Saturday morning arrived, gray and cold, typical New England spring weather. I stood before my bathroom mirror, adjusting a tie I hadn't worn since my mother's funeral 3 years ago. The man staring back looked older than I felt inside, silver hair where brown used to be, lines carved by years of quiet acceptance. The drive to Trinity Episcopal Church took 40 minutes through neighborhoods that marked Boston's economic spectrum. My 12-year-old Honda carried me from working-class Watertown through middle-class suburbs into Cambridge's affluent streets where old money met new success. The church stood imposing and beautiful, its Gothic spire reaching toward the overcast sky like an accusation. The parking lot was filled with expensive cars. Mercedes, BMWs, a handful of Teslas, vehicles that cost more than I'd made in several years. I tucked my Honda between a Lexus and an Audi, feeling like an intruder at someone else's celebration. Inside, the church was magnificent. Soaring ceilings, stained glass windows depicting biblical scenes, flowers arranged with the kind of artistic precision that spoke of serious money. At least 300 people filled the pews, their conversations creating a low hum of respectful mourning mixed with professional networking. I recognized some faces from the years when Kate and I had still attended hospital fundraisers together. Others were strangers from the empire she'd built after me. I slipped into a back pew, hoping to remain invisible until the service ended. But whispers followed my arrival like smoke. A woman in an expensive black dress nudged her companion, nodding in my direction. I caught fragments of conversation. The ex-husband. Can you believe he showed up? After what he did to her? The narratives had evolved over the years. In this version, apparently, I was the anchor who'd nearly drowned a brilliant woman's potential. Dad. The word cut through the church's murmur like a scalpel. I looked up to see Brandon striding down the aisle, his designer suit probably worth more than my monthly salary. At 38, he'd inherited Kate's sharp features and commanding presence, along with her ability to make everyone around him feel inadequate. What are you doing here? I stood slowly, meeting his gaze. I came to pay my respects. You lost that right 16 years ago. His voice carried across the church, turning heads and silencing conversations. She wouldn't want you here. Maybe not, but I needed to be here. For what? To ease your conscience? To play the grieving ex-husband for people who know exactly what kind of husband you were? The church had gone completely silent now, 300 pairs of eyes focused on our confrontation. I felt the familiar weight of judgment, the same pressure that had suffocated me during those final years of our marriage. I'm not here to cause trouble, Brandon. I'll sit in the back. When the service ends, I'll leave. You'll leave now. His voice rose another notch. You embarrassed her enough when she was alive. Don't compound it by pretending to mourn her death. I remained standing, holding his stare. Around us, the church buzzed with anticipation. Someone coughed. A phone vibrated against wood. Before I could respond, Brandon addressed the gathered mourners, his voice carrying practiced authority. I apologize for this disruption. My father seems to have forgotten that divorce means you're no longer family. A few people nodded. Someone whispered agreement. For those who don't know, Brandon continued, warming to his theme, this is Thomas Whitmore, the man who spent 24 years holding back one of the most brilliant physicians this city has ever produced. While my mother was building medical clinics that served thousands, he was content to mop hospital floors and complain about her success. Brandon, that's enough. Is it? Because I think these people deserve to understand why you're really here. He turned back to the crowd. He took a settlement in the divorce despite contributing nothing to her success. Then he spent 16 years acting like the victim while she built something magnificent. Each word landed like a physical blow, not because they were entirely false, but because they reduced 24 years of marriage to a simple story of failure and resentment. She supported him for years while he refused to grow, refused to take risks, refused to be the partner she deserved. And now he shows up expecting sympathy? "Are you finished?" I asked quietly. Brandon's eyes flashed with surprise. He'd expected me to crumble, to slink away in shame. "I loved your mother for 40 years, I said, my voice carrying clearly through the silent church. 24 of them as her husband, 16 more as someone who wished her well despite everything that went wrong. I'm not here to make claims or demand recognition. I'm here because once upon a time we made promises that mattered, and I choose to honor that memory." I sat back down. Around me the silence stretched uncomfortably. Brandon stood frozen in the aisle, apparently unprepared for resistance. "The service will begin in 5 minutes, someone announced, probably trying to restore order. Brandon shot me one final look of contempt before striding toward the front pew. As conversations gradually resumed, I caught fragments of continued gossip. But I stayed through the eulogy that painted Kate as a visionary who'd overcome obstacles to achieve greatness. Through readings from colleagues who spoke of her leadership and innovation, through musical selections that emphasized triumph over adversity. When it ended, people filed past offering condolences to Brandon while pointedly ignoring me. I waited until the church had mostly emptied before standing to leave. "Mr. Whitmore?" A woman in a tailored suit approached, professional, carrying a leather briefcase. "Catherine Mills, from Mills, Patterson and Associates. Could I have a word?" She gestured toward Brandon, who was accepting final condolences near the front of the church. "I need both of you to come to my office for the reading of Dr. Whitmore's will." "Both of us?" Brandon appeared at my shoulder, his expression shifting from practiced grief to alert interest. "Is that necessary? Your father is specifically named in the will. His presence is required by law." I felt a flutter of surprise, though I kept my expression neutral. More likely some minor formality, perhaps confirming I had no claim to her estate. "I don't think that's necessary," I said. "I'm sure it's just a technicality." "I'm afraid not, Mr. Whitmore. Dr. Whitmore was very specific about who should be present." Brandon looked annoyed but shrugged with casual confidence. "Fine, let's get this over with." The walk to Catherine Mills's office took us 4 blocks through downtown Boston, past buildings that had watched the city's evolution from colonial settlement to modern metropolis. Catherine maintained professional small talk, carefully neutral observations that revealed nothing about what awaited us. Her office occupied the top floor of a renovated brownstone, all dark wood and leather that spoke of established success. Certificates lined the walls, interrupted by photographs of Catherine with various civic leaders and business figures. "Please have a seat." She gestured toward 2 leather chairs positioned before her desk. Brandon claimed the chair closest to her. I took the one slightly to the side, which felt appropriate given my peripheral status in these proceedings. Catherine settled behind her desk and opened a thick file, extracting several legal documents with careful precision. The afternoon light slanted through tall windows, illuminating dust motes that danced in the suddenly quiet room. "Before we begin," Catherine said, "I want to express my condolences." Catherine was not only a valued client, but someone I considered a friend. Brandon nodded solemnly. I remained silent, unsure what response was expected. "This is the last will and testament of Catherine Elizabeth Whitmore, executed on February 3, 2025, only 3 months ago. The will supersedes all previous versions and was properly witnessed according to Massachusetts law." I wondered what had prompted Kate to update her will so recently. Had she been sick? "To my son, Brandon Michael Whitmore," Catherine read, "I leave my home at 847 Beacon Street in Brookline, along with all furnishings and personal property contained therein." Brandon smiled. The Beacon Street house was worth at least $2.3 million. Additionally, I bequeathed to Brandon the sum of $750,000 from my primary investment accounts. $750,000 plus the house. I watched Brandon's smile flicker slightly. He was pleased, certainly, but I could see him calculating. Kate's medical group was worth far more than that. "That's wonderful, of course," Brandon said, his voice carrying uncertainty he was trying to mask. "But what about Mom's share of the medical practice?" Catherine set down the first page and lifted the second. "I'm continuing with the specific bequests. Please allow me to finish." She returned to the document. "The bequest to Brandon includes the following conditions. He must continue employment with the Whitmore Medical Group for a minimum of 3 years following this will's execution, demonstrating commitment to the organization's mission of serving underserved communities. Brandon's confidence wavered. Conditions? What do you mean? And why 3 years? These are your mother's words, Brandon. New tension crept into the room. Brandon's hands clenched in his lap. Let me understand, Brandon said, his voice taking on an edge. I get the house and $750,000, but there are strings attached? And you're talking about me staying with the company? That doesn't make sense. Catherine removed her glasses and cleaned them carefully. Your mother's will contains additional provisions addressing the disposition of her remaining assets. Well, let's hear them, Brandon demanded. What are these other provisions? Something about Catherine's manner suggested we were approaching territory none of us were prepared for. However, Catherine said, looking directly at me for the first time, there are additional provisions that fundamentally alter the distribution of Dr. Whitmore's estate. She returned to the document. To my former husband, Thomas Edward Whitmore, I bequeath the sum of $41.5 million from my investment portfolio and real estate holdings. The words hung in the air like smoke from an explosion. My mouth fell open, a physical reaction I couldn't control. $41.5 million. The number was so large it seemed to belong to a different reality. There must be some mistake, I managed to say. Did you say 41 million? Yes. $41.5 million. Brandon's face went completely white, then flushed red. What did you just say? Additionally, Catherine continued reading, apparently determined to deliver the complete bombshell. I transferred to Thomas Whitmore controlling interest in the Whitmore Medical Group, including all subsidiary clinics and facilities. This transfer includes 60% ownership of all corporate entities and appointment as chairman of the board. I couldn't breathe. The room seemed to tilt sideways. Controlling interest in Kate's medical empire, the business I'd watched her build from nothing, the organization that had consumed our marriage. She was giving it all to me. This can't be right. My voice came out as barely a whisper. I assure you there is no error. These documents were prepared under Dr. Whitmore's direct supervision. Brandon shot to his feet so abruptly his chair rolled backward. This is impossible. She wouldn't. She couldn't. He turned to stare at me with pure disbelief. What did you do? How did you manipulate her? I didn't do anything. I haven't spoken to your mother in 16 years. Liar! The word exploded from Brandon like a gunshot. People don't just give away $40 million to their ex-husbands for no reason. Catherine's voice cut through his rising hysteria. I can assure you that Dr. Whitmore was of completely sound mind when she executed these documents. She underwent thorough mental competency evaluations specifically to prevent challenges. I sat frozen, watching this scene unfold as if it were happening to someone else. The numbers Catherine had read belonged in a different universe than the one where I worried about rent and car repairs. But why? I asked. Why would she do this? Catherine gathered the will documents into a neat stack. Dr. Whitmore left specific instructions regarding that question. She asked me to share a personal message with you both after reading these provisions. Brandon's face contorted with rage. A personal message? She left him a personal message but cut me out of everything? You received a substantial inheritance, Brandon. $750,000 and property worth over $2 million represent more wealth than most people see in their lifetimes. Compared to what he's getting? Brandon pointed at me with a shaking finger. The medical group alone is worth hundreds of millions. Catherine was already reaching for another envelope, one with personal message written across it in Kate's familiar handwriting. Both of you need to hear this, Catherine said, opening the envelope and extracting several pages of cream-colored stationery. Brandon slumped back into his chair. I remained frozen, afraid to hope for understanding. Catherine cleared her throat and began reading in Kate's own words. My dearest Tom, if you're hearing this, it means I'm gone, and you're probably sitting in Catherine's office wondering if the world has gone insane. I can picture your face right now, that expression you used to get when I'd rearrange our apartment furniture without warning, confused but trying to be polite about it. Despite everything, I felt my lips curve into a ghost of a smile. I know this inheritance comes as a shock. I know you're thinking there's been some terrible mistake, that you don't deserve this money or this responsibility. But Tom, you're wrong. You deserve every penny, and I'm going to tell you why. Catherine paused, glancing at both of us before continuing. I never stopped loving you. Not during our worst fights. Not during the divorce. Not during these 16 years of stubborn silence. I was angry with you for not understanding my ambitions, but I was angrier with myself for choosing those ambitions over our marriage. The words hit me like physical blows. Tears started hot and unexpected. Brandon, the letter continued, and my son's head snapped up. My beautiful, brilliant boy. I know you're furious right now, probably convinced your father manipulated me. But, sweetheart, you're not ready for this inheritance. Not yet. Brandon's face went white. You've lived your entire adult life benefiting from my success, without understanding the responsibility it requires. You've never had to build something from nothing, never had to make the hard choices that wealth demands. More importantly, you've spent 16 years hating a good man for crimes he never committed. That's not true, Brandon whispered. Tom taught me about character, about integrity, about the kind of strength that doesn't need to prove itself through cruelty or judgment. I forgot those lessons when I chose success over love, career over marriage, but I never forgot the man who taught them to me. I was crying openly now, not caring how it looked. Brandon, you've received enough to live well and explore who you might become without the weight of unlimited wealth. Learn to build something yourself. Learn to value people over prestige. Learn to forgive your father for the crime of being human and imperfect. Brandon made a sound like a wounded animal. Tom, you're inheriting more than money. You're inheriting the chance to do what I should have done, to use wealth as a tool for healing rather than a weapon for proving superiority. I trust you because you never wanted this, because you'll never use it to hurt people the way I sometimes did. The letter continued for several more paragraphs outlining practical arrangements, but the core message was clear. Kate had chosen character over entitlement, love over expectation. When Catherine finished reading, she folded the letter carefully. She asked me to give you the original, Tom. I reached for it with trembling hands. This isn't over, Brandon said quietly, but the fire had gone from his voice. I can contest this. Mental incapacity, undue influence. I looked at him, really looked at him. You could try, but your mother was right. You're not ready for this responsibility. And you are? His laugh was bitter. You're nobody, Dad. A hospital janitor with no business experience, no connections. Maybe you're right, I said, standing slowly. But I know something your mother valued more than business expertise. I know the difference between serving others and serving myself. This is insane. She was sick. She wasn't thinking clearly. Catherine's voice cut through with professional finality. Your mother was in perfect mental health. She underwent extensive evaluations specifically to prevent the challenges you're threatening. Then why? Brandon's voice cracked. Why would she do this to me? I felt unexpected compassion for this angry man who was, despite everything, still my son. She didn't do it to you. She did it for you. She gave you a chance to discover who you are without unlimited wealth. I don't want that chance. The words exploded from him with 15 years of entitlement behind them. What you think you deserved, I said quietly, was never really yours to begin with. Brandon stared at me for a long moment, then gathered his coat with shaking hands. You think you've won. You think this makes you some kind of hero. No, I think it makes me responsible. He stood at the door for a moment, seeming smaller than when he'd entered. This isn't finished. Yes, it is. The only question now is what you do with the life she's given you. He left without another word. Catherine began organizing papers. There will be accounts to transfer, board meetings to schedule. The management team is excellent. They'll help you transition. Catherine, can I ask you something? Of course. Did she really love me? Even after everything went wrong? She smiled. The first genuine smile I'd seen from her all day. Tom, she talked about you every time we met. Not about the divorce or the problems. About the man who taught her that success without character is just expensive failure. I walked out of that office a different man. The afternoon sun felt warmer somehow, the air cleaner. I had work to do, responsibilities to embrace, a company to learn about and help grow. But for the first time in 16 years, I felt worthy of the challenge. 6 months later, I stood in the boardroom of Whitmore Medical Group's headquarters, looking out over Boston Harbor. The view from the 20th floor was magnificent, but what mattered more was what we were building. 3 new clinics had opened in underserved neighborhoods. We'd implemented a program to forgive medical debt for families below the poverty line. Kate's dream of accessible healthcare was finally becoming reality on a scale she'd always envisioned. My phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. Dad, I'd like to talk. Coffee sometime, Brandon? I stared at the message for a long moment, then typed back, Yes, I'd like that. Justice, I realized, wasn't about revenge or vindication. It was about recognition. The recognition that character matters more than credentials, that patience outlasts entitlement, and that love, real love, never truly dies. Kate had seen all of that, and in her final act, she'd given both of us the chance to prove her right. If you enjoyed this story, please like this video, subscribe to Velvet Revenge, and share your thoughts in the comments. Click the video on the left to hear the next story. Thank you for watching.